Nigel Paine, welcome to Deakin.
Thank you very much indeed.
We appreciate you spending some time with us today to explore some of what's happening in learning globally. You're very much recognised as a profound thinker about what makes contemporary workplaces tick and what makes them effective. What are some of the game changes you see coming and how are they going to impact on what we currently do?
In some ways, the whole of L&D is in a game-changing moment. I think it's going to be pretty much unrecognisable in 5 years' time. But in the book I just wrote, I picked three things particularly that are game changers. The first is big data, and we are very data poor in learning, and we need to be data rich. And it's not just learning data, it's really gathering data from the whole organisation and making patterns so that you get ahead of the game. Big data will help us work out what we need in 2 years or 3 years or 4 years, not what we need now. The second game changer is neuroscience, and I can't believe anyone would dispute that. The stuff we're learning now about how the brain learns is massively important, and it tells us that a lot of what we do at the moment is not effective in terms of the brain. And there are lots of things we can do, we can add on that will make the learning more effective and will engage the brain. And an engaged brain leads to an engaged person. It's as simple as that. And the third game changer is, unsurprisingly, technology. Mm-hmm. And I don't mean there's going to be a remarkable one big new solution that will appear in 6 months or a year's time. I mean that the way that we've kind of appified, we've created all these small apps that control our lives. The same is going to happen in learning. There will be a whole host of learning apps that we better plug together, and we better use some and reject others and change them. But essentially, it will allow us to build learning environments that suit the individual, and perhaps we'll have different learning environments for every individual. Facebook's learning tagline is one size fits one, just like Facebook. Every front page of Facebook, wherever in the world, is unique. There are no two front pages the same. We may be able to do that with learning. So technology will not only be the technology related to learning, but technology that is based around the world, stuff that people are using day to day in organizations. We can begin to exploit that for learning. So them are three really big, really important game changers.
Fantastic. And innovation playing into that. DeakinPrime as a partner, learning partner, we're often asked, what are you doing that's innovative in your programs? What's new? What's your view on innovation in learning, and how do organisations create environments that are going to encourage innovation in terms of how they develop and deliver their learning activity?
I think those two things are really fundamentally linked, that we can deliver learning in a way that discourages innovation, closed learning, content-driven learning, learning that requires rote response to the learning, so we learn things off by heart, learn commands, learn procedures. Or there's learning that can open up the whole world for an individual, can help them be inquisitive, can help develop curiosity, can help them ask really smart questions, and set at that sort of process of opening up with some procedures and processes that can allow specific initiatives to be developed. So to me, a company where innovation is left to the few, or where we don't touch it at all because it's too hard, is a company that's in big trouble. And learning is the place that will unlock the spirit of innovation and creativity. So partly it's about getting people all excited, but it's not just that, it's also about developing pretty rigorous processes that will allow us to experiment, fail early and fail fast, and eventually build new ideas and new things which will take organisations forward and perhaps even transform organisations.
And playing into that, organisations invest significantly in the development of their leaders, leadership development programs, but inevitably there's a sense of frustration that they're not as effective as they would like to be in terms of what they deliver as an outcome for the organisation. Have you got any insights into why those programs sometimes aren't as effective as what they could be, and what organisations need to do to address that?
Yeah, I think the bottom line is that leadership is the most expensive area of learning and development. Most organisations spend more on leadership than practically anything else, and also it's the area with the least satisfactory impact. So most people enjoy leadership programs, they're a lot of fun, Most people within 3 days or 4 days of coming back into the workplace are doing exactly what they did before they went. So they had lots of good ideas, they didn't implement them. A successful leadership program is one that focuses on impact. So you start with the end in mind. What behaviours do we want to see changed? What do we want to see happening around this place that doesn't happen already? And you work back from there. And what that tells me is that the actual leadership event, the learning event, is a small part of a process that involves engagement with line managers, maybe setting up an action plan of what you hope to achieve in the leadership program, being helped to implement the changes that you've learnt in the program, perhaps having a coach or a mentor to see you through. Certainly having a line manager who holds you to it and says, I want to see development here. And also being encouraged to do the same thing again and again. So the previous habit is replaced by a new and better habit. So leadership programs can be made to work, but you've got to take a much bigger and a much more holistic view than let's have 3 great days off-site. You can maybe do that, but that's not the same as developing your leaders.
And I think playing into that, I've heard you talk about the fact that business or organisations have made a lot of investment in process and system, but now really it's the century of people. How do we invest in that? So what do you actually mean by that?
Well, simply that we managed to get really significant percentage gains in efficiency over the last century, largely through technology and processes. And if we want similar gains, we've kind of come up against a hard wall, and that wall is people. If we want similar gains in efficiency, we need engaged staff. Most organisations have most of their people disengaged or neutral. And some organisations manage to employ people who actively work against the organisation. Miraculous, but still, nevertheless, they do. What we need now are organisations where the vast, vast majority of people are engaged, using their brain rather than switching off their brain, and are willing to go the extra mile for the organisation. So that the organisation that has effort being put in voluntarily by the individual, and the organisation where you do your job will be the differentiator. So to make everything work better, we need better people and more engaged people more consistently across the organisation. That's why I say the 21st century will be the century of people.
So in terms of how learning and development professionals can contribute to that there's been, in my experience, a shift from learning and development being prescriptive and controlling the learning programs, the learning content, and albeit providing a guide, but opening that up for people to drive their own learning journeys. From a relevance perspective, what do you see that learning and development professionals need to do to evolve to make sure they remain relevant and add value to the organisations with that shift occurring?
Well, in a few words, give up ownership of learning. That sounds a slight crazy thing to say, but if you think you control all the learning in your organisation, you will never build a learning organisation and you will never have much learning going on. What you've got to start to become is a facilitator rather than a controller, a framer rather than a shaper, someone who encourages other people to take ownership across the organisation. And some of the most exciting learning leaders that I've come across and some of the most exciting learning organisations have given away a lot of the learning back into the business and said, look, that's your job, you run all that. I'll focus on being innovative, offering support, facilitating engagement, bringing new stuff in and testing it before handing it over, rather than, this is mine, I must control this. So it's really, in some sense, learning everywhere, learning organisations where learning is a natural part of the work process. Work is learning and learning is work. That's the aim, and you can't have that with a learning team who think it's mine, I control it, I tell you what you can do. But do the opposite, which is saying, how can we help you make the best of the learning opportunities available to you, both across the organisation and on an individual basis?
Absolutely. Nigel, I know you spend a lot of time in Melbourne. Have you found a favourite Melbourne restaurant?
I love lots of Melbourne restaurants. I went to the Seamstress a few days ago, which was excellent. Moon Underwater, I probably get the names wrong. Moon Underwater is a lovely, lovely restaurant. But I'm going to go shortly for my wedding anniversary to, what's it called, Vlado's?
Steak restaurant.
Exactly, which is been there like 50 years and still. So I like some of the new stuff, but I also like some of the old iconic been there forever, Melbourne restaurants. So no, I'm very fond of eating in Melbourne, and I have never got tired of finding new places. And I guess I could spend the rest of my life finding new places. It's a great place to eat, is Melbourne.
Brilliant. Nigel, thank you very much for your time.
It's a pleasure. It's great to see you. Thanks very much.